Kisiljevo, Serbia, 1725. The air is cold, heavy with the smell of damp earth and wood smoke. A splintering sound, not the wind. A woman's scream shatters the night. 10 days, her husband has been in the ground. Now he stands in her doorway, pale lips, sunken eyes. This is not a story. It is a memory, sharp as broken bone. The village wakes. Torches bloom in the darkness. Fear has a name here. It is Petar Blagojevich. He has come back, and the village knows what it must do. The question before us tonight: how does an empire perform an autopsy on a living fear? Ink tries to contain the blood. The woman's testimony survives in a dispatch dated January 1725, written by a man who never expected to write such words. Provisor Frombald, local administrator of the Habsburg military frontier, records the complaint in careful German script. But even his tidy penmanship cannot hide what follows. 9 more deaths in 8 days, all in the night, all claiming the same visitor. The village assembles at the churchyard, spades in hand. They tell Frombald what they intend to do. He does not stop them. He cannot. His duty is to the emperor. But the emperor is in Vienna, and the dead are here. The spades strike the earth. The coffin lid groans. And there he is, Petar Blagojevich. Frombald leans closer, the torchlight catching the dampness on the corpse's lips. He records what he sees, what they tell him he sees. The body, complete and undecayed. The skin, new. The nails, grown long. The blood at the mouth, fresh. Then comes the sharp stake, a sickening crack of bone, a gush of dark liquid. Frombald writes it all down. His report is no longer an observation. It is a confession. An imperial official has now participated in the ritual. The machinery of state has touched the supernatural, and something begins to change. But another threat is coming, not from the grave. It travels on paved roads, carried by men in clean uniforms. It is the Habsburg eagle casting its shadow south. It is the river of steel and ink flowing from Vienna, an empire of ledgers and laws arriving to impose order on a land it just conquered. For the villagers, the fear is of the restless dead. For Vienna, the fear is of a restless frontier. The machine arrives to solve a problem it cannot understand. This is the Militärgrenze, the military frontier, a scar on the map, newly torn from the Ottoman Empire by the Treaty of Passarowitz 7 years earlier. For Vienna, it is a buffer zone to be pacified, colonized, and taxed. For the Serbian villagers living here, it is ancient ground where the veil between worlds has always been thin, where old ways and old fears protect them when empires fail. The Habsburg bureaucracy flows into these villages like floodwater, reshaping everything it touches. Parish records are standardized, taxes are assessed, and when something inexplicable occurs, a new reflex takes hold. Write it down, file it, send it up the chain. Frombald's dispatch reaches Belgrade. From there, it travels by barge up the Danube to Vienna, where clerks at the Aulic War Council, the Hofkriegsrat, open the leather pouch and read the impossible. A local official, normally trusted to manage grain requisitions and road repairs, is now reporting exhumations and stakings. The language is bureaucratic. The content is apocalyptic. The council does what councils do. It files the report. It makes copies. and it waits. Because Vienna has learned something crucial about imperial power. You do not need to believe in monsters to weaponize the fear of them. These reports become proof, not of vampires, but of provincial backwardness, of a frontier in need of civilizing, of a people who require the guiding hand of rational authority. The fear is real. The Empire's response is coldly strategic. Cinders and codices exist to recover the voices buried beneath that strategy, to pull one more truth from the archives before the ink dries forever. 3 men will write this story. First, Provisor Frombald, the local administrator caught between his duty to the emperor and the terror of the people he governs. His quill hovers over the vellum, trying to translate screams into tidy German script. He knows that what he writes will be read by men who have never felt this kind of fear, men who will judge him. He chooses his words carefully, walking a narrow line between credibility and madness. Then, 7 years later, Johann Flukinger, the military surgeon, a man of science and steel, sent to a new outbreak in the village of Medvedja. His task is not to listen, but to cut, to weigh, to measure, to report. He arrives with a commission of 5 other officials, 2 more military surgeons, 2 officers, a drummer to maintain order. They bring instruments. They bring Latin. They bring the full weight of imperial procedure. When Flukinger writes his report titled Visum et Repertum, Seen and Found, it will become the most famous vampire document in European history, not because it confirms the supernatural, but because it so perfectly demonstrates the bureaucratic domestication of terror. Far away, in a quiet abbey in France, Dom Augustin Calmet gathers their letters. A scholar of God, he hunts for the devil or for reason in the details. His 1746 treatise, Dissertations sur les apparitions des anges, des démons et des esprits, et sur les revenants et vampires, becomes the encyclopedia of the panic. He collects every account. He weighs every argument. He never visits the frontier. He never touches the soil. But he becomes the official memory keeper, the man who decides which details are credible, which are superstition, which are worth preserving in the record. This is not a story about whether the dead walk. It is the story of how a modern empire, armed with scalpels and statutes, performed an autopsy on a living fear. How folklore was not debunked, but documented into a new kind of horror. The horror of the official report. The state-sanctioned diagnosis that silences the patient's cry. The transformation of human terror into intellectual curiosity. The archive does not destroy belief. It embalms it. To understand how this happens, you must understand the sequence, the escalation, the way one fear feeds another until the only escape is ritual. 7 years after Kisiljevo, Medvedja, winter, 1731. A soldier named Arnaut Pavle returns from service in Ottoman territory. He tells the villagers he was attacked by a vampire there. He performed the proper countermeasure. He ate soil from the vampire's grave and smeared himself with its blood. Folk remedy, frontier protection. He thinks he is safe. Within weeks, he falls from a hay wagon. He dies from his injuries. Within a month, 4 people in the village die suddenly. All claim, before death, that Arnaut Pavle visited them in the night. The villagers exhume him, 40 days in the ground. They find what they fear, the body undecayed, blood in the mouth, the nails freshly grown. They stake him, they burn him. They do the same to the 4 others who died. The outbreak stops. The matter is closed, or so they think. But 5 years later, in 1731, 17 people die in Medvedja within 3 months. The panic spreads like fever. The livestock die. The fields fail. The survivors are certain. Arnal Pavlegi is not finished. He fed on the cattle before he died. The cattle were eaten. The contagion has spread through meat, through blood, through the very sustenance of the village. The dead are breeding more dead. This time, Vienna does not simply file a report, it sends the commission. Flückiger and his team arrive in January 1732. They do not come to save the village. They come to observe, to document, to turn chaos into data. The exhumations begin. 17 bodies are removed from their graves in sequence. Flückiger examines each one. He notes the findings in meticulous detail. Body number 1, a woman 60 years old, dead 3 months. Skin, nails, and hair fallen off, the body putrefied. Unremarkable. Body number 2, a woman named Melissa, dead 2 months. Face completely red and fresh, blood in the chest cavity. Anomalous. Body number 3, a child, 9 weeks dead. Entirely fresh. Supernatural. The pattern emerges. Some bodies decay, some do not, and it is the undecayed ones, the incorruptus ones, that carry the stain. Flückiger does not theorize, he does not editorialize, he simply records. But his silence is strategic. By refusing to explain, he allows the report to serve 2 masters, the villagers who see confirmation of their fears, and the imperial authorities who see a medical curiosity awaiting rational explanation. The commission's verdict is procedural. The bodies showing signs of vampirism are decapitated. The heads are burned, the ashes are returned to the graves. Order is restored, not through understanding, but through elimination. The report is sealed, dated and signed by all 6 officials. It begins its journey west. We follow it now. From a muddy grave in Serbia, sealed with wax in a leather pouch, it travels by horse to Belgrade, by barge up the Danube to Vienna. From there, scribes copy it. It crosses borders into Germany, where it is published in the Commercium Literarium of Nuremberg. It is translated from German into Latin, into French. With every step, the scent of the grave dirt fades. The sound of the screams grows fainter. By the time it reaches Dom Calmette's desk in Paris, it is no longer a warning. It is a curiosity, an intellectual puzzle to be debated over wine. The Parisian salons seize upon it. The learned men of the Enlightenment debate. Are these reports credible? Can the dead truly return? Or is this mass delusion, provincial ignorance, a failure of reason on the frontier? The terror of Medvedja becomes entertainment. The names of the dead become footnotes, and the villagers who wept over those graves are never consulted. Their voices are not in the archive, only the voices of the men who examined them, only the voices of the men who filed them away. This is the elegant cruelty of bureaucracy. It does not need to shout. It does not need to threaten. It simply removes you from the story. It replaces your testimony with an expert summary. It takes your words and translates them into a language you do not speak, in a city you will never see, for an audience that will never feel what you felt. But buried in the clinical Latin of Flückinger's report one word holds the key: incorruptus, undecayed. For the surgeon, it is a strange biological fact to be noted, a failure of nature. For the villagers who first uttered the word, incorruptibility is profoundly supernatural, a sign of a soul rejected by heaven and by hell, a saint or a demon. The entire conflict lives in that single, misunderstood word. The Austrians think they are documenting a medical anomaly. They are actually recording a theological crisis. In Orthodox tradition, an undecayed body is a sign. If the deceased was holy, the incorruption is proof of sanctity. If the deceased was sinful, it is proof of demonic inhabitation. The body refuses to return to dust because the soul refuses to depart. This is not folklore, this is cosmology. The village is not confused, the empire is. And yet, the empire writes the final draft. The Viennese physician Michael Ranft publishes his treatise in 1728, De Masticatione Mortorum in Tumulis, on the chewing of the dead in their graves. He offers naturalistic explanations: gas buildup in corpses, the shifting of soil, the effects of cold on decomposition. He does not dismiss the reports, he dissects them, he pathologizes them, and in doing so, he performs the final act of intellectual colonization. He replaces the villager's reality with his own. Why did an emperor care about one unquiet grave on the frontier? Because an orderly empire cannot tolerate disorderly dead. These reports, copied and sent to the learned journals of Europe, are not cries for help. They are specimens, proof of a provincial malady that the rational minds in the capital can study, classify, and cure. The true beneficiary is not the terrified villager, but the imperial project itself, justifying its civilizing mission by painting local belief as a disease. The voices of the living are erased to pathologize the dead, but the empire makes a miscalculation. It believes that by documenting the fear, it can contain it. It believes that ink can hold blood. It cannot. The reports escape. They proliferate. They are read not as curiosities, but as evidence. Evidence of something vast and unspeakable. The panic spreads not despite the documentation, but because of it. German states report their own cases. Poland, Russia. The undead are everywhere, and now they have official confirmation. By the 1750s, the Habsburg court realizes its mistake. Empress Maria Theresa's personal physician, Gerard van Swieten, issues a report condemning the vampire investigations as superstitious nonsense. In 1755, the Empress decrees an end to all exhumations without state permission. The panic is declared over by imperial fiat. The graves are sealed. The reports are filed. The matter is closed, but the names remain. Petar Blagojevich, Arnaut Pavle, Milica, Stana, the women whose faces were fresh and red, the children whose bodies refused to decay. They are not forgotten. They are remembered, not in the archives of Vienna, but in the soil of the villages, in the songs, in the warnings still whispered to children. Do not speak the names of the dead after dark. Do not eat meat from an animal that died without cause. Do not disturb the graves. The empire that wrote them is now dust. Its borders are gone. Its eagles are museum pieces. The Milita Grenze is a historical term, a shaded region on a museum map. But the names Petar Blagojevich, Arnaut Pavle are still spoken. Not because of the tidy reports in Vienna, But in spite of them, their story was too vital to be contained by a ledger, their fear too loud to be silenced by a seal. The archives remember the procedure. The land remembers the people. There is a field in modern Serbia near the town of Kisiljevo, quiet, sunlit. The wind moves through the grass. There are no markers, no monuments, no plaques explaining what happened here. The official history is silent, but the local history is not. Ask the old women in the village and they will tell you. Ask them about the graves that were opened, about the bodies that would not rest, about the night the screams began. They remember, not from books, but from the unbroken chain of telling, from grandmother to mother to daughter. The archive forgets, the body remembers. This is why the work matters. This is why we return to the documents, to the dispatches, to the fading ink and crumbling vellum, not to debunk, not to explain away, but to recover the human presence beneath the bureaucratic language, to hear the scream inside the ledger, to remember that every official report began as someone's living terror. Ink tries to contain the blood, but the stain always spreads, revealing the truth beneath the official script. The light refuses to die. Subscribe to Cinders and Codices and keep these stories alive.